Start recording.
Okay, I don't say you did that. It is the
They're going and they're backing people up.
All right, we are ready to start. Welcome, everyone, to our September TMAC meeting. So glad you could all join us today. I am, let's start with introductions. I'm Joy McMurray, TMAC Chair. Let's go to the left today.
Jeff McLaughlin, TMAC member.
Beth Province, Alligood, TMAC member. I don't know what to call myself anymore. And Beth.
Lisa Jensen, Planning Commission member and TMAC member.
Vern Kiesler, Pro City Engineering.
Gordon Haight, Provo City Engineering.
Judy Johnson, Provo City Engineering.
Noah Gordon, TMAC alternate member. Tim Hamula, TMAC.
Kehan Schwartz, Provo City Engineering.
David Mickelson, Provo City Engineering.
Joseph Gandy, Provo Public Works.
David Day, Provo City.
Mr. Tago, TMAC alternate. Gordon Golding, Provo City Development Services.
Hampton Tesher, Provo City.
And Noah, a special welcome to you. Would you mind telling us a little bit about what brought you to TMAC, maybe some of your background or things that you're interested in related to transportation in Provo?
So I'm here because Vern made me. Counting me would not let me be. But I'm a lifelong resident, with the exception of a few years of Provo. Interestingly, one of my ancestors they were the first couple married in what was then Fort Utah before it became Provo.
Wow.
So deep roots. My wife and I, we live in Grandview. That's where I was kind of born and raised. We moved back there after we got married. We are parents of 6 children, all who so far have attended BYU, so apparently just can't leave Provo. Professionally, I'm a civil engineer. I'm the city engineer for Linden. I was a consultant for a few years and then worked for Springville as the city engineer and then city engineer.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Vern, for helping him get here. And then we welcome you and feel free to chime in whenever you feel like you should. Okay, next action item. Let's talk about our minutes from our August meeting. Would anyone like to move that we approve those minutes?
Move to approve the minutes.
Would anyone like to second that motion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Thank you. Great. Next item, we've been, again, working for many months on discussing balance in the city and as part of that in modes of transportation. And we went through the old bike master plan from 10 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah, 10 years ago to say, what do we do with that now? And we wrote a letter to the city council and the mayor after much discussion about what our recommendations are. Jeff, give update and status of letters.
The update is between last meeting and this meeting, we got the copy to engineering and they got it to the council and administration.
Woo-hoo.
All the updates that there is.
Okay, and feel free to let us know, or hopefully we'll hear responses from them at some point.
How long ago did they receive it?
Oh, this week.
Yesterday.
Yesterday.
Okay. Just wondering if
Long ago.
have responded. Hours.
So
Probably less
now-
than 24 hours, let's put it that way.
Okay, then we would like to turn some time over to David Mickelson from Provo Engineering on a road rehab update. Maintenance.
Kehan asked me to put this together, kind of just to go through kind of what we did this year on our road rehab project. So this year, in this presentation, I've only included kind of our mill and overlay and micro surfacing roads. We also did crack sealing in a number of neighborhoods, as well as a pavement preservation slurry or a seal on some of the other roads in the neighborhoods in Provo. So this will be mostly focused on kind of the larger sections that we did. So one thing that we added later in the year was Center Street. And so we ended up milling and overlaying from University to Freedom this year as part of some downtown improvements. Take a trip down there. We've added some outdoor dining areas on First West and Second West on the north side. And then we've also installed one of 2 that we'll do raised crosswalks. So the raised crosswalk that's in is at 450 West, and we'll be starting the next one at 50 West on Monday.
I saw somebody hit that so fast yesterday and they had a trailer and I thought there was a car accident. It was,
It will be a learning curve for
yes,
sure.
it will.
But we're seeing positive feedback from that. From the people.
Question,
Yeah.
on the outdoor dining areas, where are those located?
So those are going to be on the northwest corner, or sorry, at the northeast corner of 200 West and 100 West, around center. In front of Joey's and in front of the India Palace, I believe. So we just, basically what we did for those, we removed the planter that was there and put in concrete. So
Is it the restaurant that is in front of it that uses it, or are they open for anyone to sit there and eat?
I'd assume that the restaurant that's in front of it will be the one who mainly uses it, but it's
So
open.
they don't have the rights to it?
Right.
Okay.
So here's some before of Center Street. This is looking from about 50 West, looking west. Road was in pretty bad shape. The worst spot was further down, about 150, in front of the Marriott. You can see it was pretty bad. So here's some after photos. I just threw them all on one page here, but on the same views. Here's the Marriott. So we've taken a drive. It's a lot smoother now. Looks really good. We had Sager Parsons do this work, and they did a phenomenal job down here. So that is all wrapped up. So all we have left is the raised crosswalk, and then road rehab will be completed this year. So Lakeshore Drive, we did a section basically from the roundabout at 620 North up through, I can't remember what street we stopped at, but we did a micro surfacing, kind of just freshen up the road and give a little top coat to that. 880 North, if you've ever gone on 880 North, this is just west of Geneva Road. We had some weird environmental damage. They were 6 to a foot deep or wide cracks, just this whole section of road. Very loud road, very uncomfortable to drive. So we ended up rebuilding that road this year, putting down 3 inches of new asphalt, and it's a huge improvement. So we're very happy about that. 1375, so this is the hill up from the 820 North roundabout up into the Grandview neighborhood. We did rebuild this one significantly. We milled it down and found that it was pretty thin. We ended up adding additional asphalt onto the hill here. In Grandview neighborhood, we did 1550 as well as the road just to the west of it. I can't remember the name of it. But we did resurfacing as well as adding bike lanes and striping from 9th North all the way up to the school.
1416.
Yep. So that is working pretty well, and we're happy with how that came out. So one addition that we didn't have it on our plan this year, but we added it after the winter that we had. The roundabout on 3700 North, as well as the 2 blocks in either or the first block in either direction, really just fell apart during the winter. We had some microsurfacing that went bad, and so this was just potholed like crazy. So we ended up redoing that, and they did amazing work on that roundabout. This is one of 2 roundabouts. Didn't include the other one apparently, but we did 700 East Center Street roundabout as well. Kind of the same thing, kind of blew up over the winter and had tons of potholing and shoving and things like that. So we redid that roundabout with kind of the first 100 feet on either direction, and that one came out very well as well. And then the last kind of big road that we did was Quail Valley Drive. From the bottom of the hill, I think it's 250 East, all the way up to Foothill Drive. And we kind of did some new striping there to allow for some parking next to the high school, and was significantly improved on this road. So with all the construction and previous things that have happened here. But so that's kind of what we did this year for road rehab. Any questions?
How much did the severe winter affect the list of projects? Did it set you back?
Yeah.
Like there were things that were slated to be done this year that didn't get done because you had to redo other things?
Not necessarily, but it may affect going forward, how much we're able to do in the coming years. just with budget constraints.
We used a little bit of this year's budget for last year's projects because so many roads were shaped, and then that doesn't help us this year. That's what it means going forward, we have less money to.
I would guess with all of our freeze thaw, with all the moisture we have, probably 5 years worth of wear and tear roughly in this last year.
I just was
We had a
wondering
lot
if
of
we were
stuff.
already seeing the effects of that economically, or whether it was gonna take several years for that to.
You'll catch up.
Yeah, we'll see it relatively soon. So from a statistic sort of standpoint, I ran some numbers this year because I was interested. The work that we did this year was about 2% of Provo roads that we were able to cover with our maintenance program this year. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but it's not. So, but you look at the roads that we are able to do, and we're doing a good job with what we've got. So.
And you're not showing us the smaller projects as well, right? That
Yeah.
amount several.
Yeah, so I mean, along Quail Valley here, all the cul-de-sacs we did a pavement preservation on. We did a number of preservations over by 880 North. This neighborhood, the surrounding roads, we did either microsurfacing or I think it was just micro in this area. We did in the tree streets, we did a mixture of microsurfacing as well as the slurry seal, if you want to call it that.
So
So,
microsurfacing is when you just put tar in the cracks, and slurry seal is when you put like a tar-looking stuff over the whole thing.
yeah, so the slurry it's basically just a seal coat on the whole road, is that black looking goo. The microsurfacing is a mixture of that and some aggregate. And so that actually gives you about a 1/4 inch surfacing on the road. That helps with, it helps correct rutting, helps correct some of the cracking. Any of the microsurfacing we did crack seal before that to help seal that water out. So yeah, kind of a mixture of those.
Theoretically, how long before the roads you did this year need additional maintenance?
I mean, in an ideal world, it'd be 3 years and we'd be doing a seal coat or some type of pavement pres on them just to keep them in that good condition. It may not be for 10 years that we make it to some of these roads, 10 plus.
What's your annual budget?
Our annual budget is 2.6 million. I think we increased that this year to 3.6. We're seeing 5 years ago, we were able to do about the same amount of work for that cost, and we're seeing an increase of about 65 to 80% in cost. So we're trying to keep up with that, but that's kind of what Gord mentioned is we've been borrowing money from next year's projects to keep up with that. So we're going to have to kind of revise how much work we're actually doing each year to the budget we have.
So doesn't the budget for road maintenance come from that $3 that everybody pays in their utility bill? So does that maybe mean we should be making a recommendation to the city council on upping that amount, which doesn't apply, but
Certainly, you can make recommendations. But
I'm just saying that clearly, I'm doing the math in my head, and if if the road's only gonna last 10 years, 20 years, and it takes 50 years to get to all of them, then we have a deficit.
Yes.
LTAP did a study on our roads, and they do a really good job, but they were saying we need to spend about $6 million. Is that right?
Yeah.
About $6 million a year on our roads, and we're less than half of that. So you can see where that deficit kind of builds and builds to where, next year maybe they'll do the LTAP study and they'll say, now you need 7 million and now you need 10 million because you're not keeping up. And the cost to do this preservation, like $1 a square foot.
Yeah.
Around that, so just comparatively.
And to do kind of a mill and overlay or rebuild, you're looking at $6 to $10 a square foot.
Yeah, and then a total rebuild's like $20 or
Right.
more.
So it's just, the more money we can put up front, right? Like if 880 North here, if in 3 years I can go and slurry seal this, that gives it another 4 or 5 years of life. And it's way cheaper than waiting the 10 years and having to do even a microsurfacing, or waiting 15 years and having to do a mill and overlay again. And that's kind of the challenge that we're trying to balance in Provo is, hey, we've got a lot of good roads. Let's try to push funding towards those, but also we have a lot of bad roads. So we're trying to balance how much we're dedicating to each kind of that, try to make it, I don't know if fair or equal in the city is the right terminology, but try to balance all the roads, but knowing that our better roads, these are the ones that we want to focus on because we can keep them better for a lot longer.
Hierarchy, as it were? I mean, is it like arterials get this maintenance schedule and connectors get this maintenance schedule, and the local roads are just gonna kind of like, those are the ones we hold off on?
Unfortunately, yeah, that's kind of how it falls. We try to look at arterials and collectors first, just because they are going to maintain more traffic. We want to keep those in better condition. With my 5-year plan, I am trying to get as many local roads as I can, and that's going to be adjusted each year based on funding and pricing and whatnot. But I am trying to balance doing all the local roads as best we can. We did a couple last year that hadn't ever been done for 30, 35 years. And so I think it's kind of, I'm just looking at the city as a whole and trying to get every neighborhood at least once while I'm doing this to try to help, you know, improve all the roads as we can.
I've been on TMAC, I don't recall us ever reviewing the budget. I don't know if it's within our purview to review the budget. But to the degree that it's a transportation issue, which I think it is, mobility issue, would it be worthwhile for this budget item to be reviewed by us, and so that citizen input can be given ultimately to city council? We can address this issue as well about whether we ought to be recommending a tax fee. We said that we're to, which I know it doesn't fly in a lot of quarters, but someone has to speak the truth about it. And if we have a problem not being able, if we're falling behind on our roads, all we're doing by not addressing is kicking the can down the street, current approach. I mean, that doesn't make it. Someone's going to have to deal with this. Why not us?
We can't be over here saying, let's build amazing bike lanes and then have them riddled with potholes, like the 700 East roundabout is a classic example of a very dangerous setup for a bike lane. And then not have money to pay for the maintenance of these great interconnected roads.
The tragedy of it is that the maintenance, the annual or 3-year maintenance is so much less expensive than the long-term. The waiting greatly increases our costs. And so to save money, to actually budget appropriately, I think I am less interested in saying, here's the maintenance budget category, let's micromanage our professional who's making those decisions. But if we wanted to say, look at the transportation budget as a whole, I would be hesitant to make a recommendation on, let's increase it until I know what it's competing with, right? To say, well then, how is that spent? I don't know, I wish Gordon was in the room. Is that in our purview to tell the council how to spend their dollars?
I wouldn't even say that we're gonna tell them how much. I don't think that our recommendation as a committee would be, we think you need to raise the taxes even. I think we're looking at, just very generically, the numbers of how much it costs to repair roads at the rate that we're replacing them is not gonna keep up with the demand. So you need to consider how you're going to allot the budget next time around and make sure that road maintenance matches. Like I don't even think we need to review the numbers. I think we just need to point out there's a deficit and say, this is an item that the council needs to consider when they do the next budget allotment. Whether it comes from fighting for more taxes, I don't think that would ever happen, or whether it comes from interdepartmental.
I would agree with the numbers. It's foolish not to look at the numbers, at least conceptually, and identify long-term trends and say, this is unsustainable from our perspective.
Then you have more
That is our
details to give them, yeah.
We can provide a copy of the report because it's pretty specific and like Dave said, many days in our department, but, we are not funding at a rate, eventually it's going to catch up to us. And like I said, we're pulling from the next year's fund, so next year we're looking at being able to even do less roads than we anticipated. So, again, I don't think we talk about, like I said, taxes or anything, we just say, you have the budget, make sure we're giving proper attention to this as we think about all the allocations and so forth. So I think that'd be a good approach.
But to add, one of the things that TMAC is supposed to do as well is education.
Yeah.
It's not just us toward the council, it's also us toward the public. And I think understanding this and spreading that news may be one of the good functions that we can do for the city as, you know, all the population and not just the council. Help people get that in their minds that it costs money to maintain streets. And
I think the way we do it matters. We don't want to have anyone feel attacked or undermined.
yeah,
We support the council, we're not at odds with the council, so I think so much.
So when the Utility Transportation Fund was first enacted, and I think it was 2014, 2015 timeframe, the city worked with the consultant team to bring transportation utility fees to Utah. Of course, everybody knows it was challenged. It was challenged in court, went all the way to the state Supreme Court. We won on that. Provo was the first city in the state to adopt transportation utility fees. At the time, the study recommended that we needed somewhere around 4.6 million a year in maintenance fees. We were able to raise 2.1 million, about half of that, 2.2. I think we're getting about around 2.2, 2.3 million a year now.
From the $3.
From the Utility Transportation Fund. What's great about that fund is it can only be used for maintenance of our roads. No one can get their hands on it and try to rededicate it to a different fund or a different use. So that's what's neat about the Utility Transportation Fund. It should be double, right? When we start talking about what we need. But to first implement the program, the Mayor Curtis thought at the time that it'd be more modest to raise half the funds and then find a different method for the other half of the funds. The other half of the funds never showed up.
I was just gonna say, in Salt Lake City, when I was there, they hit this bubble and they went out and did a $100 million bond that was only for overlays and repairing roads. And so that was like a 20-year bond to take care of the roads. And you see that with a number of cities. You know, again, no one wants taxes or anything, but at some point, your public utilities, you got to stay ahead of that. And so it's critical to do that. I don't think Provo's in that position today. I think before this utility tax came in, that was the way the city operated. It would go out and get a 10 or 15 or $20 million bond, maintain the roads for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and then they would have to wait till that bond was paid off and then go get another bond, which is, you're paying interest. It's not a sustainable practice. And so you either maintain your roads up front or you really struggle with a problem at the back end. So that's the water, storm drain, any kind of infrastructure you have. You can't, cities don't build cities. Cities maintain cities. That's number one, you know, police, safety, maintenance. That's what we do. The developers build all the infrastructure. We build a few roads here and there, but if you look at the actual lane miles of construction, that's the developer's job. We try to put in sidewalks, but it's so expensive, you need that developer background. So I think a primary function of the city is maintenance. And if you look at public works, we were one of the biggest departments because we take care of everything. And so I think that's a core responsibility. I don't know if that had to do with anything.
So with the UTF Utility Transportation Fund, I process those fees. Recently, I don't recall how long ago, it was revisited. There was a small increase. I'll give you an example of the basic level. Used to be 289, something like that. Now it's like 317, for example. Not all categories saw an increase, but some of the categories saw pretty basic increase there. So that helped. probably that a little bit that you saw there probably had to do with that
We got
increase.
$60,000 this year.
So that, and then
Extra or total?
Extra.
extra.
Okay, I was like, I thought it was a bigger.
No, we're getting the
2.2,
2.2, but just went up $60,000.
And then regarding the LTAP study that we consulted with Utah State University, that report, that they had a recommendation of annually how much we should be spending to maintain as well as our road service life. Was that report ever shared with council at all?
It was, yes.
So that they were kind of aware of our deficit on how much are we in deficit every year and how much do we need to be able to maintain our roads. So in a way, they're aware of it.
About half of them are gonna turn over soon now, so it's a good time to bring the conversation to their.
We plan to do that in the budget season. So each year the budget will present this. And again, we're competing with every need in the city. And so, Dave Mickelson put on a little makeup, looked better, but we had him stand up there with a tie. Maybe next year he'll wear a suit coat and he'll get us the money.
I don't like an orange shirt.
So on a philosophical basis, has the city adopted a best roads first maintenance, or is it really where you're being progressive and trying to keep, because it's way less for the budget to keep your best roads, just keep them maintained, or are you essentially having to go back and wait until it fails and then fixing those roads?
We're
Which
focusing
costs a
on
lot
best
more, right?
roads, but we are having to replace roads because we're finding you can't let roads get too bad.
So what has the city council bought off on?
Oh.
Because that's what it really boils down to, is because they're the ones that have to answer to the constituents. My neighborhood's failing, I just saw this new road get, fixed again, why is that? And they have to be the ones that are able to stand up and say, here's why.
I would probably categorize this policy as good roads cost less philosophy. And then our staff kind of prioritizes that, balancing like the tree streets, for instance. They really don't have a lot of collectors in the tree streets. Tree streets got a lot of stuff done this year for surfacing. But yeah, we did Grandview and we did Tenview Drive, or Quill Valley Drive. Those are both collector roads. And so I think Dave does a really good job at balancing that between the neighborhoods and our need for collector and arterial. I'll tell you, I get calls every week saying, hey, we need this road done. We need that road done. And sometimes I'll tackle them. Sometimes I'll send them over to Dave and let him answer the question, especially when I don't know when the next plan is or when their road is up in the next 5 years. But Dave has that 5-year plan and does a real good job with it of balancing that. So I wouldn't call it best roads. I would call it good roads cost less philosophy, and then we kind of prioritize within that concept.
But you're looking at a 5-year budget. I mean, you're not
5 years.
You're not even going 20 years in order to.
No, we're looking at 5 years.
Question, is the city council is aware of the budget shortfall. Have you also talked with them, Dave, about, the great cost savings in maintaining roads properly? Are they aware of that? I mean, the $1 a square foot versus $20 a square foot, that's a huge difference.
And a lot of that's contained in that report that LTAP did. I personally have never made a presentation to council about that savings. I know in the past it has been, in previous years when we've had LTAP do the study, we've made that presentation, but council's changed. So I think, like Gordon said, we'll look to making both sidewalk and this road rehab presentations to council in the spring when that turns over.
Kind of escalates to Gordon and Dave Decker's level on the budget stuff.
So it's easier to blame Dave though.
Yeah, he's got so much.
It isn't Dave,
It's another Dave, not this one.
That's it, Dave.
We have a really
We have a lot of days.
we have a really good video that was put together when we did the UTF.
With another day.
And it's starred and directed by Dave.
Yeah, there was another Dave in there. But I could share that with whoever wants. I have copies of it. I saved it in case it somehow got destroyed, but kind of talks to the idea of, hey, let's see how much roads cost. Let's budget it and pay for it as we go, because like Gordon said, a $100 million bond, you're paying interest on that. So you're probably losing, I don't know, $5 million of that money in interest. I don't know what the number would
The
be.
interest isn't good today, so I'll take it.
So rather than saying, hey, let's pay $5 million interest, let's spend that on fixing the roads. And that's kind of what this video talks about.
Joy, with your approval, maybe we can put that on the agenda for next time and show that video to the TMAC members. I've seen it several times because I was a consultant team that.
Parametric products, was it?
Yeah, we brought forward transportation utility fees in the state of Utah. So, we're to blame. So.
I think Jim has a great point that not saying, hey, this is gonna be a big problem soon to the powers that be, like, that is something we should do, and I think Jeff has a great point that educating the public to be mindful of that is, like, those are things we should be thinking about.
Yeah, in fact, when you start talking about 2% of the roads for this amount, and if we stay at that amount, we're gonna be doing 1.5, and then pretty soon 1% of the roads. When in reality, we should be doing more, right, not less. And so just to maintain where we need to be, I think is a very good point. And I think it's well within your purview to make that type of, hey, we want to bring this to your attention. And so we may be looking at another letter.
Hey, they're gonna love us.
Could we, to Jim's point, could we, when we watch that video at the next meeting, could we maybe just see like the last 5 years of expenditures and percentage of roads covered or something, just so that we can see a trend? Because I like that idea of having a trend to show them that this wasn't an anomaly just because of the bad winter. It really isn't enough to sustain it.
Yeah, we can do that.
Is that data gonna look crazy because of COVID within the last 5 years? Or does?
We still drove on the road.
I don't think so.
No.
David?
COVID year is actually one of our best years for road maintenance because there was no cars on the road. So it actually was our quickest year. We finished in like 2 months. It was a great year. So, but no, we spent the same amount of money.
Like 2021 budget where they were like, oh no, we don't know what's gonna happen.
No, ours, because of our funding sources for that, we really didn't see an impact to that change.
Yeah, pretty constant.
We did see some price increases, definitely in 21 and 22, and this year as well. We saw asphalt's like 30% up this year. So we have seen impacts from COVID, but the projects we haven't.
That will be another good trend to see, not just how much you spent and how many roads you covered, but the cost of materials to do those, so that you could see that even if inflation hadn't affected how far our dollar could go, or, you know, just so you could see other factors involved.
Yep.
So, question that's been swirling in my head, what is the growth rate of new roads added to the maintenance schedule?
New developers is what you're asking?
New
Well,
development roads?
the developers pay for the initial,
Right, and then we take them
but then we have to add it to the maintenance.
So you want to know how many miles of new road have been added over each year?
We are adding new lane miles
Something we
every
can
year.
do.
Yeah, we can probably figure that out.
We can give you a map showing each year how many new roads were built in the year, in the city.
Yeah,
I mean, just even a ballpark, just a percentage of the total,
I'm just saying, I
With
think
that
Focus even
contributes
further
to how much
forward than
money
that.
how much your money can
because
cover.
if you're adding miles and miles and miles, your maintenance.
Our percentage goes down.
So Provo, we have some development on the east side, but the west side
That's gonna
is
explode as
growing, but
usage.
it has been slowed as a result of not getting the sewer plant done. So the sewer plant's up and running, everything's going, so
That's
I
gonna change
anticipate
real quick.
that the real growth is in the future, but in the near future, so.
We're averaging about $30 million a year right now of
New infrastructure.
new infrastructure. That counts roads, sewer, water mains that are built by developers. In terms of,
As
30 million
as the west side develops,
2.1.
even without new roads being built along with that development, you've got more traffic driving on the current roads, so the wear and tear, like, look at the road to the airport. That probably lasted longer than a normal collector would, or arterial would, because there wasn't traffic, but now that there's people going on it all the time, its lifespan has just decreased.
And that's one of the roads that I get a lot of complaints on.
Oh my
is
gosh, it's
West
scary.
Center- West Center,
It's scary.
so.
Oh, West Center, I was thinking of,
Lakeview Parkway.
Lakeview Parkway.
No, they're expanding that right now, so.
But
Yeah.
still, like, it's, even though it's got ripped up before its time, it's gonna run out faster.
And another thing we're looking at is our signals. We gotta do a massive upgrade. The guts, we have like 55, 52 signals in the city at the end of this year that are city operated. That doesn't count the UDOT ones. And then we have a large number of cabinets for crossings, and the workings of the signals have started to degrade a lot. And so it's a literal almost replace the entire cabinet. So right now we're looking at a plan to go through the whole city and replace, and we want to replace all the lights from the LEDs because you end up saving a lot of money plus the wattage. So there's a huge infrastructure upgrade the city needs to invest in pretty quickly. So it's not I love the roads, but I also think we got to think about the other aspects of it.
Does that come out of the same budget?
Similar, but not
Not exactly.
Not the transportation fee?
No.
No, not out of the UTS.
Fees you get from developers when they're developing versus how much.
It doesn't cover any of that infrastructure. So what we do, that Provo's unique on this, Dave or somebody did this before I got here, it's really clever. I'll say Dave did everything from now on.
Dave did it, yeah.
But
Say, Dave, it covers everything.
we charge a fee for every developer that comes in to do a 1-inch overlay over their road once the subdivision's built out. That way, all the truck traffic, all the delivery of materials, cement trucks, so they can have a brand new road and it really preserves the road. And that we do within 2 to 3 to 4 years, but that is the developer cost. As far as any other fees, they don't go for infrastructure maintenance. That's
So that is one aspect of new,
But, yeah, we can't, legal, and again, remember, this is a property rights state, and so you're not gonna be able to charge those kind of things.
so that is one nice thing of new development is they do bake in, or we bake in the first maintenance to those roads on the developer. But then after that, it's back on us.
Yeah, so all those miles
Is
of
it a
roads
set
that get,
fee?
It's based on how many square feet of
so
road.
now your 2% that you got done is now 1.5.
Yeah.
Has it been up so that it covers the cost of materials?
We do a pretty good job of keeping that up, but you know, like you said, you estimate what the cost is today, and in 3 years,
Yeah.
we've gotten, but we're managing it.
Asphalt goes up pretty
It seems to me, again, just to underscore the point made earlier, that Public Works is gonna be bringing forward these issues for the normal budgetary process. And I think that's great. My guess is that a legislative body is going to hear that and say, thank you. But maybe we can add as a citizen committee some heft to those recommendations, having them heard here, whether it be signals or roads or any other transportation-related infrastructure, that allows staff to make an initial presentation and vet it somehow before it goes there. And even when it does go there, independent of us, we have the opportunity as a citizens committee to say, and we really advocate or suggest or recommend that this be heard, be considered, this issue, and I would just urge that we add that to the list of things that we as TMAC do from.
Our presentation will be sometime in January or February.
That's
So-
just Dave Decker, one giant thing, or is it engineering?
Dave went and got to say something. We put him up there, made him look good, and then stand in front of him for a minute.
And then each division within Public Works has their time.
We get a good 5
Retreats and-
So
How long did we
Jim's
just have this
right.
discussion? So I propose that we revisit this next month, maybe with more, just come back again
Absolutely.
with more information, and maybe tell us, since we are not as familiar as you are with the overall transportation budget, before we say, hey, let's make sure we do this, let us know if there's other things like the signals that we should be aware of that you might want to put on as an action item, a possible recommendation to the city council to look at this carefully and to be aware that this is coming. Maybe they know, but maybe they don't know. Because
We
they
have
don't
brand
these
new
detailed
council,
presentations we
so-
get.
Yeah.
And that's a real train wreck coming in the future that, like, we don't want to just kick the can under the
I
rug.
actually think this year's a great year to have this come to them in January because they're all,
They all knew.
most of them are going to be
There's
new.
gonna be 3 new members.
And this problem is not just a problem for Provo, it's a problem not just for Utah. I mean, I made the same presentation, I'm looking at it right now, that I made in 2017.
Can we call this?
To Lyndon.
The numbers, I'm
And
sure.
I said,
What's Lyndon doing?
so in Nebraska, they looked at this and they just said, we can't afford to maintain the roads, and they just roto-milled them, which means they just ground them up and just left them gravel. They just said, we cannot afford to pave the streets that the developers are building because they don't pay into the maintenance. Gordon's exactly right. The developers are the ones that build the city.
Yeah,
Essentially
they don't.
continue to expand it, but then they get their money and they leave. And then we all get to, I was just looking, I did a comparison back in 2017, so it's been a while, of transportation utility fund fee. This is just the residential fee. So Provo's at $350, at least they probably didn't get all that. Pleasant Grove was looking at adopting one for $490. This is 2017 numbers, so things have only gone up. And then there was some litigation.
Yeah, because Pleasant Grove adopted theirs and the study maybe wasn't as sound as it should have been, so it did go to litigation.
But then it,
Made it all, and we lost at the lower court, but won at the Supreme Court.
they were looking at adopting $490. Mapleton just adopted one wholesale, $8. Nobody said anything because they have no businesses to kind of help weigh that out. They're completely residential. Highland, $18.50
Per month?
per month
That is
for roads.
road maintenance.
This is the transportation utility fee, $15 for South Weaver. So I'm saying at $350, pretty low.
We're pretty
If
conservative.
you can even capture all that.
So we may have started it, but everyone else jumped on the bandwagon and they have
Vineyard,
surpassed it.
interestingly, Vineyard, Don Overton, who also used to live in Provo, now lives in Vineyard, they just said, we're just gonna take Provo's study, and they just adopted it wholesale and started getting the revenue. Spanish Fork did something sneaky, and they just said it's part of our storm drain maintenance, and so that's how they got around getting litigated, interestingly. But at $350, it's not bad, right? I mean,
50 again?
$18.50.
The
That was passed
issue,
in May of 2017.
I will tell you that cost the city engineer's job in Highland, by the way. Because what he did is just took every address and every land use and divided it by the same amount. So there's no difference from the Macy's grocery store and the single-family home. They were both paying the same amount. That is not the nexus. When you do this type of study, you need to look at ITE trip generation rates for the particular land uses. That's why Provo's was solid, is because we did it by land use category. It's not fair for a McDonald's to pay the same amount as a single-family dwelling when they have 400 trips an hour and you have 10 a day.
But it's still a set fee, so you figured out an approximate usage,
Yes.
and then all single-family residences, regardless of whether they have 6 cars or
So
0.
this is where it gets between taxes and fees. Fees are supposed to be based on what you're actually using, and the only way you can do that, unless you want to put a meter in everyone's car, how many trips they're taking, is to say, we use the IT trip generation manual, and say, here's how many trips these different uses do. So it's an approximation.
And that's really important information of the different cities and what they're charging. You can see that we started off pretty modest, half of what we needed just to get the fund going. And I think we need to bring that to the attention of the city council.
Nobody wants to pay more.
I was gonna say,
Unless
I
you
was
don't
just
like
gonna
driving.
say in my mind, I'm like, I don't wanna pay more fees.
So I brought that up to Lyndon. I said, so how about we just make all the roads gravel and you just wash your car a lot more? And everyone looked at me like I'd just fallen off the turnip truck, right? They looked at me like, and they said, we need more money then. And then they saw that's the reality.
Yeah, but here's the secret. When we show you the video next time, that extra $3 a month, $36 a year, you'll be glad you can't open your wallet fast
I
enough.
understand that, it's just the initial result, the initial is like, oh crap, now all my bills are going up
Right.
again, and I don't have as much money as I did before, because inflation's going up, and now da-da-da-da-da-da.
Water.
But it's better than paying it on a property tax. And that's what's so unique about Provo is about half of our property in Provo is tax exempt. Due to we're the county seat, we got a lot of churches, we have BYU, So one of the things, so, yeah.
If we did it with the tax, you would exempt half the property in the city.
Oh, but this way, the other properties do.
If it's a fee, then it goes on the water
Because they
bill, and
use-
all the water.
Like, for example, does BYU provide their own power, or do they get it from?
Everything comes.
Well, they used to have their own power department, but they get most of it from Provo City.
So they do pay into this fee.
They pay into this fee in a different way, yes.
So here's the thing, when I was in, Harriman was great, because it was brand new city, all the roads were within 20 years of being built. When you're in a city that's mature like this, you have to pay a little more attention, and you can't be cavalier, you have to stay on top of your maintenance, and that's all your infrastructure.
Well, I just hate the mentality of let's wait till it's a mess and then let's bond for it, like that. I know, and people keep selling bonds like they're the way to go, and I'm like, no, don't spend money until you have it. Budget for something, spend money on it when you know, I'm gonna need this, so it's gonna be in my pocket, ready to go.
I think that was the third discussion you want to add.
Oh, I was just add, this was one of the reasons that I moved to come to TMAC, was road maintenance funding. I was looking at a capital improvement plan, 2014, 2015, right around when that transportation utility fee was there. And it was just, I mean, in a box in the bottom left corner of where they had all their projects listed for roads, they were thinking about adding segments. And there's this little box in the bottom left corner that said, oh, we make about this much and we need about this much for road maintenance. And I was like, we got to talk about this DNC plus transportation utility fee plus whatever they can shave off of general fund is not.
Do this again next month, great. I think TMAC is convinced. We need to look at that, okay. Next item 6, Vern has graciously waited since last month, so I want to make sure we have time for this to present about our transportation mobility improvements.
Sure. We wanted to just show you some of the minor projects that we get done, based upon, calls and concerns about this and concerns about that. This is actually the 3230 North, pedestrian crossing that we did. There was a study done last year, that warranted this pedestrian, flashing beacons that we put on. So this was an upgrade.
This is across from Dave, it's by Dave.
Yeah, from the
Yeah.
Matasada. So a lot of high school students from Tent View will cross this at all hours of the day because they have the flex schedule where they could have time off. Or they're cutting classes. So we installed this, and believe it or not, I got about 5 complaints within the first 48 hours of this. And it's a 35-mile-an-hour roadway. And the people that complained were people that come out of there and make a left onto that road. And now that we put a raised median in the middle of that, to bring more attention to the pedestrian and almost as a safe haven, they can't pull into the middle lane to merge over. So what I told them to do is make a right off a Tent View that's a 25-mile-an-hour road and access southward from there. A guy owns a travel trailer. He complained. So I just always like to point out that there's people that are very happy with this. There are people that hate it too. And so any transportation improvement, and that's indicative of the society that we live in today. There seems to be an equal number of people for and an equal number of people against. But this is one improvement that was warranted. Okay, let's go to the next one. This is Quail Valley Drive. Dave did show this. What we ended up doing is we ended up restriping this after the surfacing, taking away parking that was on the north side of the street and bringing that parking to the south side of the street that had frontage for Tent View High School. And that has worked out immensely well. We developed and worked with Tent View High School. As you know, they're in their 4th year of reconstruction of that high school. This will be the last year. It will be done next summer. And by next fall, they'll have a brand-new parking lot for a lot of the students to park on. So right now, we have students parking here, which is legal. We have students parking on Tentview Drive, and they even sometimes infiltrate into the neighborhoods even more. The neighborhood, we held a neighborhood meeting. They all see the light at the end of the tunnel. Parking's been pretty good. Bowden, tell us about parking up there.
It's been a lot better this year than it has been in the past. Last year and the year before have obviously been terrible, but with the new improvements that you guys have been doing has been phenomenal. You know, it's been a lot better this year. So.
And the school itself has done some wonderful things. Not only did Edgemont Elementary School allow for a little bit of parking for their staff and teachers over there, the LDS Stake Center, a few blocks to the south, allowed for the teachers and staff to park there, no students, but teachers and staff. And then principal is having them in vans shuttled to and from the front of the high school. So that's what, I mean, everybody's doing their part. And it's been great to kind of see that consensus and that success based upon what we've done and how we've worked well with the high school up there. Go on the next one. This is the East State Street striping. So we have a resident that lives in Springville that commutes up here to BYU and works there. And they take this road in and out every day, twice a day, right? And what they said, hey, we're seeing people sneak into that left turning lane. Have you seen that a ton?
Over the years.
And I went out and looked at it. I said, oh, that's an awesome recommendation that we got to do something there. So we went out there and looked at it, our whole team, and Kahan and I came up with an idea.
What you guys did is awesome.
Yeah, and it was inexpensive. And now people know not to get in that lane because there's no receiving lane. The two left turn lanes or the through right or the right
So
and
if
the
you don't
left.
know this, this is by the cemetery, and both of the lanes are left turn lanes. It's the only direction you can, well, the right lane is also a right.
Most people aren't gonna come down here to turn right unless they're like trying to get to the Maverick or access.
They'll take third south.
Super easy fix, very inexpensive, but it was a safety issue.
Yeah.
A huge safety issue. There's no receiving third lane.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, yeah.
I've seen that happen before, and then they get there and they're like, what do I do? Especially when they're queued up all the way to the elementary school driveway, like if everybody's going all at one time, it's a mess.
So I think what's important to point out on this one is that we received a call. Someone had a legitimate concern. We went out, investigated it, and we found a solution. And that's what's great. Not always are we able to drive every street and go out and look for the problems. Now, we find plenty of problems when we do go out. I just found one today. Sign was completely blocked. I took a picture of it. We'll get it fixed. But these are the type of things that we don't know about it. And so all those calls that we get from concerned residents are very important for us, and we process it.
I do want to add, Vern, from the moment that we received the call, within 2 days this was done. So we responded to it quickly.
Should have called 10 years ago.
Yes. Who knew?
Is there a rule about, because I know each of the stripes and the distance and the striping all mean something. Is there a rule about doing something like this?
Yeah. So there are standards in the MUTCD of how to stripe this.
So you didn't just make this up, this
No,
is
we didn't make that up.
I don't know, there's people on Slate Canyon Drive that are painting stripes wherever they want them, so I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I don't know if we took before and after pictures, but we had someone painting red curves and doing the same thing that you're talking about. And so we had to go out and visit with the residents. They live in the tree streets and all, you know. And so they were painting red curves. So we got those curbs repainted to gray, concrete gray, and we put up a no parking sign so their fire hydrant and the stop sign won't be blocked. But when people take it into their own hands, it's usually not done correct.
Education vigilante.
Yeah. Let's go on to the next one here. This was a major project. This was a little bit more intense. We've had many wrecks, including a severe injury crash and a fatality into the Walmart shopping center at Parkway Village on 550 West and University Parkway. So we worked with the Parkway Village, the owners of that, and worked with legal, and we were able to have a study done late last winter, early this year, that said we need to do something. So raised medians were placed in on 550 West there, where people can no longer make a left turn into the east side of the Parkway Village.
You have to go in by the UCAS High School.
So you can go by UCAT High School, which is another block earlier. And, or if you want to make a left turn and go up to the next traffic light, you can access it that way. So this study was done, and Dave, I believe, actually designed this. So we put in the raised median, we put in the pork chop, and we're getting mostly compliance. The compliance that we're not getting is at the very end, there's a no U-turn, and people are still trying to make a U-turn. They can't make the U-turn, so they have to do a 3-point turn in the middle of 550. So we coordinate with the police department on a monthly basis, and Lieutenant Orgel told us yesterday that he was out there for 30 minutes and pulled over 4 people in 30 minutes.
So they turn right going southbound, and then they make a U-turn to go northbound?
Yeah.
The U-turn to get into the park.
So instead of turning into the dealership and making a left there and kind of turning around and making right out of there, they try to conduct a U-turn at the very end here. That third picture would probably show it best. They try to conduct a U-turn right there. So anyway, we're not going to have any more side swipes or T-bones with people making a left-hand turn in front of that.
And just to say that you cannot successfully make a U-turn, so don't try it. It's not going to work out.
There's not enough room.
Yep, Lieutenant Orgel will be there, so.
Put a sign right where the car is gonna hit the curb and just be like, told you.
We said no U-turn, but you missed the sign. Unfortunately,
I love the Lieutenant Orgel's watching, you know, underneath the no U-turn, for real.
Lieutenant Orville used to be one of the cops.
Really?
oh, did he really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to tell us that.
He's no longer assistant.
So believe it or not, I had 4 complaints on this immediately after we did this. 3 of them came from people that were pretty angry that said, I can no longer access this the way I want to. I asked them where they're coming from and how they normally access it, and I tried to explain that, you know, we had a fatality here, this is gonna make it safer. When we put the cameras out here, I don't know if I've ever showed you the cameras. Well, I did the study before I came to Provo. So I will show you next time the video on this, and you're gonna be like, what? Can't believe that there wasn't more accidents than what we had.
And hopefully in that video, you can recognize your cars as well.
We'll have pop.
I'm the pedestrian jaywalking, you already know that. I'm trying to get to the UBX stop in the middle of the street.
And you saw a lot of that with the UCAS people, right?
Yep.
And so, anyway, this will help. One person hadn't been to Provo in a while, and I think they were more upset about 7th North than they were this particular one. But they sent it actually to the city council, and it was a pretty long email talking about how all the raised medians are awful and they're just democratic and blah, 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 blah. And anyway, won't get into it, but I will tell you that there are people that aren't happy with these types of improvements as well. In this case, it was a safety improvement, an engineering study warranted it, and we did that construction.
Well, I liked, because we had talked about it at a meeting a couple months ago, so when I finally came to this, I was like, looking ahead going, oh, I see there's a raised median. I can't turn in there anymore. And I had to think ahead. But the fact that you still could turn in by UCAS meant I didn't have to sit through 2 light signals to turn left. I could still get there in a safe way. It just slowed me down, very minimally.
Yeah, if you come in through there, and we had some upgrades on the interior of that Parkway Village.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I was cutting a parking lot. I felt like I was doing it legitimately.
Right, that's because, and that's the way it was designed.
Good.
I do have to ask though, Vern, did this cause the demise of Pizza Pie Cat?
No, it was Pizza Five Cafe was out before it.
Legitimate question. No, that was, after revenue.
You know, I think there's been 3 or 4 things in that building over the years, and they just can't, yeah, they just can't stay in the Mexican restaurant.
One of those places.
Pizza Pie Cafe,
Yeah.
like the convenience store.
They had a good run. They had a good run.
Vern, I did want to add, I can see how that would be if it's the email, but I also do understand the perspective expressed where we have 700 North, we have no Cougar, where people's historical driving patterns have been interrupted. 700 North, you do have to know ahead of time. If you're trying to get to the library, you only have a couple of choices of where to turn to have a fair chance of getting there reasonably. So I can understand, Provo is requiring a high degree of thinking ahead of how to get, because we've limited choices, and I can see how that would be frustrating.
Well, for the 3 people that aren't traveling by Google Maps.
Google Maps is wrong. Sometimes they're
I
wrong.
think they know 700 North.
And you guys can all appreciate it. You go to BYU, you graduate, you leave. Now 20 years later, you have kids graduating from BYU. You come back and you're like, wow, this city's changed, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of.
Good. Another one here. This is a pretty big one too. We had a lot of complaints about Carterville Road and 1730 North. So what we ended up doing is adding do not block intersection sign further away from the old mill access. We put do not block stencil, which took months to get in. We did get that in. And then we put a left and right turn lane off of Carterville Road instead of just one lane, which would either hold up traffic for those that wanted to make a right because they were waiting to make a left. So we separated that out, put a do not block intersection sign there as well. This has worked out, and then I think we have a chevron so no one drives through the car wash on the opposite way. But anyway, we did a lot of signs. This is functioning a lot better. We're going to give it a year, maybe more. We're going to see how it functions, see if we continue to get complaints, because the next design they're not going to like. I will do a raised median, and I will block off left turn movements onto Carterville Road is the next step. So we always try to take the lowest step first and then go to the next one and then the next one. This one, I think, will work. Yeah, Jeff?
Anecdotally, I've been through it a few times.
It's awesome.
And people have been very compliant.
Okay.
Yeah, it's great. It's been at least 6 months, hasn't it? Been in there for a while?
Not the do not block portion of it.
That was the part I noticed. How long
That's
that
just maybe 3 weeks, a month. Yeah.
So there wasn't something there before? Maybe the square was
We
there?
had the square.
I
Okay.
was gonna say, a long time ago, there was a yellow square that you were.
But we refreshed the square as
We
well.
refreshed the square and the crosswalk and the stop bars.
Awesome.
So that wasn't, I think the stencil cost more than everything else put together.
Really?
Holy cow.
Yeah, those stencils are kind of pricey.
Industry having it.
So most of these, these have been improvements that are safety improvements, really.
Yeah.
These, yeah, mostly safety.
Related,
Yeah,
okay.
mostly safety related. Let's go on to the next one. This one was in the Franklin neighborhood, right next to the Pioneer Park and Farmers Market. I went to a neighborhood meeting. Someone said, hey, Vern, we got people speeding up and down First South, and it's, you know, they don't understand as they're coming off Fifth West, which is a faster signed road, and then we need a crosswalk to get to the park. And I said, these aren't there? So we went out and looked at them, sure enough. So we installed this 25-mile-an-hour speed limit sign coming off of State Street, and then we put in the crosswalks, which they should have been there anyway.
Are those on the west side of the park, the southwest corner of the park?
Southwest corner of the park, yep. So we have improvements that we do that we consider small like this, like a speed limit sign, no parking sign, crosswalks. They have to meet some type of warrant, but other than that, a lot of safety improvements. We're busy doing something like this every week. I don't think there's any more, and I know this should have been over 5 minutes ago, so I'll be quiet.
No, that was great. I appreciate all that. I just, yeah, we didn't need to go into restaurant land. That was the only cutting off. Thank you. That's so good to see. That's really encouraging. I've had problems with multiple workplaces personally, or I've seen accidents at those, so that's really encouraging. Let's see. Thanks for doing well on time. I wanted to just begin, we have, Kayhan has up for us, the list of priorities of things TMAC that we thought we'd want to work on this year. And let's get just through the top three, the list of the top three. That was our full list that we had sifted and ranked. And then could you zoom in a little bit? Yes. And we worked really hard on, I guess we'll call it item D, really number one, about balance. We've talked about that. We've looked at the budgeting side. And where the dollars have been spent. The bicycle letter, the bicycle plan letter. I wanted to start talking about G, or which is our third, the residential connectors and collectors traffic calming measures. We mentioned Slate Canyon especially. I think that's something we'll be talking about in future meetings. But I wanted to use this meeting to begin that conversation. I would like to know, number one, what are the residential connectors and collectors that we would most like to look at, and talk about what traffic calming measures maybe could go there, or what's happening, what could historically were the problems. And second, what kinds of data do we have available to us? I don't want to just say, oh, well, we know this road for sure is a problem, this is a problem, without having some sort of foundation for that conversation. I guess maybe there's two contradictory things, but like, what are some of the or is this something that staff could present that we know those areas? Or do you want TMAC, we could brainstorm a list of ones we know are problems besides Lake Canyon?
I was thinking maybe we could just review what we've seen in the last couple of years. Champview Drive, we had a citizen work with the engineering department to come up with some great calming measures. They had great citizen involvement. They, restriped things and put art out and just did everything to make it beautiful, and everyone screamed about it because the mayor didn't know it was going to happen or something. And so or the neighbors didn't know it was going to happen. But whatever the case, I feel like we had this great opportunity to try out all sorts of things and get public feedback on it, and instead all we heard was public outcry. And I think the same thing happened on Slate Canyon Drive, where engineering spent all sorts of time setting up simulated slowing, calming measures, and the people whose house it was in front of were very inconvenienced by it, as is usually the case. And bus drivers had a hard time with it. And so I feel like maybe we could just sort of talk a little bit about what we've seen happen on some of these roads that have continuously been concerns. 2230 North has continuously been a concern, but all we've been able to come up with is a, hey, you're going too fast flashing sign that doesn't even tell you how fast you're going, because we can't remove parking, or we can't get rid of a bike lane, or somebody doesn't want whatever, or it's a collector or arterial, so we can't do that to it. And so I think we all know where the problem spots are, and some of us have seen different things being tried. So I would just like to sort of brainstorm about what has gone well, and maybe learning from our experiences of how to do it better. Because I felt like the stuff on Tempe was fantastic, but I don't live there, and I knew it was coming. So my take on it was different than somebody who lives there and didn't know it was coming. So how do we learn from those mistakes and either try them again in a better way or quit trying?
So I must say, this was one of the first projects that I got involved. Rob Hunter, my manager, previous manager. So all the traffic calming measures, we call them tactical urbanism, the temporary traffic calming measures that we applied on Timview. You could blame it on all Rob, so everything was Rob's fault. But I must say that we spent quite a bit of resources from our end. It was our time that we spent there, an entire day that I could recall. Rob was there, myself, a couple other folks. We had those temporary curbings to get the roundabouts going. We had those islands, the protected bike lanes.
It was so well done.
The paint, resources. So we spent a lot of time there, I must say that. It got to the point that we have had a couple threats that we actually got police involved, so to that level. Right. And it also got to the point that some of these traffic calming measures, like having park strip, we had trees, big trees and things like that, they were all ripped out. The concrete was ripped out, the rubber curbing ripped out. So it got pretty, I would say, serious, if I could call it
Right,
that way. Our goal was to leave everything there for a month because Tempe was due for a overlay. So we wanted to use that 1 month of cushion or window that we had, put everything there, leave it there, and then get as much feedback as possible from.
But instead, they just shut it down.
Yeah, I mean, some people really liked it. So the demographic, as you know, on Timview, either they are the 18, 19-year-old or either they're in the high 60s, 70s. So there's no kind of middle ground in there. So that's why we had like, oh, it's really good. No, it's really bad. We couldn't really get the kind of feedback that we were hoping for. And we ended up taking out everything in 1 week. So we didn't even leave it.
So we don't even have any opinion even to say this works, this doesn't work. So the reason I'm thinking of this is because 2 days ago I was driving south on Tempe Drive and there was a mom with an e-bike, I think had a basket on the back of it, and a kid that was riding along with her. So they were obviously commuting home from, I would guess, Edgemont, because I had passed them almost the entire length. And I was thinking to myself, as they had to kind of get really close to me because there was a car parked on the side of the road, how awesome it would be if they were on the inside and the car was parked on the outside, and that was one of those things we were trying to implement. So I feel like the key for us to slow traffic is to find a way to model it and try it out and get feedback instead of outrage.
The one thing that I must say that we learned prior to implementing the tactical urbanism project, maybe a year or year and a half prior to that, we did have a neighborhood outreach, but it was way too long until the implementation date. So maybe a couple of weeks before the implementation, it's always a good idea to do another neighborhood outreach, refresh them that, hey, this is what's coming.
Also,
So most
why
people
we're doing
completely
it.
forgot about it. Yeah. And then they're caught off guard. So that part of it, I would say neighborhood outreach, do it right before the tactical urbanism project. That should help.
Notes on everybody's door to let them know this is what's
We
happening.
had
This is why
flyers,
you're
we
getting
had
feed.
barcodes, we did all the.
For the
due diligence.
Timpview one?
Yes.
And they still acted like they didn't know it was coming. Interesting.
I live on Timmy Drive. I think the first I heard of it was on Facebook. I think the name Tactical Urbanism might be a little bit off-putting because the impression I had was that it was sort of like a vigilante group that had done this with sort of the city. But the city had kind of been like, we'll just turn the other way while you do this, you can try it out, which I have no problem with it. I'm totally in favor of making it a safer street, and I'm in favor of the changes, but I think there may have been an optics problem with the neighborhood, and my neighbors, it is a demographic that you have to have an uphill battle with anyway. One big opponent of it came to me to get me to sign a petition. He lives on a corner. You'll know his house because it's been under construction for 10 years.
Yeah.
And it will never be done. But
They'll never, yeah.
but I told him, I said, Mark, I'm not opposed to these changes. And honestly, unless you want to give up part of your yard for another lane at some point, like, you should be in favor of anything they can do to slow this traffic down and make it less of a desirable artery, because that's what it's becoming. And anyway, couldn't convince him, but I think that that's something that we need to do is do a better job as TMAC. If we aren't just facing the city council, if we're facing the city of Provo, the citizens, then we need to do a better job.
So they also pay consultant help, right? I mean, we designed those roundabout and some of that visual graphics that you saw. We did it for Slate Canyon, we did it for 1450 East, we did it for Tentview Drive. And for engineering to go out there and implement some of these ideas and concepts have been discussed at TMAC, only to get their teeth kicked in by the public, we're a little gun shy now.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, who wants to go back out and get slapped upside the face? We don't want to do that. And so we're taking a little bit of a passive approach in the sense of, okay, we'll put out your speed sign, okay? We're willing to put $3,000 out there and put your speed sign out there, but to go back out to the neighborhoods and be treated like these folks were, I don't think we're excited to do that.
I remember there being some political backlash too, that it wasn't just that you guys were treated poorly, it was that people went running to the city council representatives and the mayor, and then you guys got slapped by them as well, which is, these are our objectives, they're in the general plan. Okay.
It's really, I feel like
But
it's
did the-
unfortunate that it's going to take, there's gonna be a fatality on Tippy Drive. And it's only a matter of time. My wife was hit by a 16-year-old driver where she was taking her Vespa to BYU just last week. And I see kids riding up and down Tippy Drive on all kinds, I talked about this before, all kinds of illegal vehicles. Not just legal, like e-bikes have very specific legal definitions in the state code. They're riding bikes that are not e-bikes. They think they are. One of my kids that I teach in church, he's 13. He said, oh, my friend's got this bike, and the police pulled him over and high-fived him for how cool it is. This thing goes 50 miles an hour. It can ride wheelies. It has no pedals. An e-bike has to have pedals. It has no pedals, it has no VIN number, it has no turn signal, headlight, or taillight. It is not a legal vehicle, and I see those up and down Tippy Drive in the bike lane every day. And it's only a matter of time before there's a collision, someone's going to die. And so, you know, if that's what it takes to change people's minds, it's just really unfortunate.
Yeah, plus you got a whole bunch of new drivers, as Lisa just stated, and the problem with that
And
is
2 elementary school zones.
we're gonna have a set of new drivers every year on Tentview Drive.
It's actually around all year long, and
Yeah.
whenever the birthday is, so.
Right.
That's what he means, like, you never run out of them, they're
Yeah,
constantly.
Yeah, there are always new drivers because of the high school, right?
So Tentview Drive, I mean, that's a one specific case, but generally, I mean, you've been telling us today, Vern, about the complaints that you're fielding. How many, do you get a good portion of complaints about speeding on roads that make it dangerous for pedestrians or bikes? Like, this is what TMAC thought would be important, right? Like, we've got to calm traffic on collectors. Is that what you're hearing, city employees, as a major concern of the city, or?
We're getting speeding complaints, we get requests for four-way stops that obviously when we do the studies, they don't warrant those stops. We get complaints, about parking quite a bit now that BYU is back in session. We get a whole host of complaints, and I love fielding them, actually. People think you're crazy. I like learning where those issues are. And then I also try to provide a little bit of education component. So someone called the other day on First North between 500 West and 900 West. Hey, they're doing 50 miles an hour on this road. We need some traffic calming. So Center Street was closed at the time, right? And so we're going to close Center Street next week. And we're going to be doing the second raised crosswalk there. And then hopefully by November, we'll have the whole thing completely done with all our crosswalks or with all our, painting and all that we need to add. Then I'll go out and do First North, and I'll study it. We'll go out and take a look at First North, but I'm not gonna do it while Center Street's under construction. It's just not what we normally would see. I anticipate that the study's gonna show that there's some speeding, and that 7th West is probably gonna be a nice corner to do some bulb outs to kind of control some of that a little bit. That's about halfway between 5th and 9th. That's my gut feel, but I won't know until I go out and put the counters out there and see.
Not during a construction diversion.
Right, and we obviously that's why we hold off on our analysis for pedestrian crosswalks until school's in session. We don't want to do it when school's out of session.
Do you think that's gonna change a little bit with Dixon moving shoreline?
With what?
Dixon moving over to shoreline? The middle school
Yeah,
moving.
so I think it will next year, but most of that traffic, I think, is going north to Dixon, not traveling east and west on First, because Dixon's on Second.
I feel like people use,
Well,
when I go up and down First,
Go around on First.
Do you go around
I
on
do
First?
go around. When I go on First, it's usually to bypass Center Street or having to make a left turn onto Fifth West. So
Yeah.
I could see that there's a lot of east-west shortcutters.
So what we could do, Joy, to kind of help you and the TMAC
My
focus,
question is, how do we get at this item as TMAC? How do we want to approach this? That's my question.
because I think there are residential collectors that continue, and they're always going to have a problem. Slate Canyon's one of those. We can go back to the records and we can show that we recommended that there's no homes fronting Slate Canyon. We've shown that, okay? Only road accesses, but that's not what got approved. So what ended up getting approved, and Slate Canyon's not a bypass by any means. No one bypasses Slate Canyon. So we're gonna put something else out there And then I think we're gonna be very satisfied with the amount of work we've done on Slate Canyon. Now it's up to enforcement and education. I think our engineering component is done.
Can we see where most of the complaints come from? Like, is there a way, I don't know if you track it.
We track it.
I kind of figured
From
you
a safety perspective, where are the most,
Yeah, where are
Where's
the
the
most
most-
complaints throughout the city?
or not even
I
the
like those
actual
two
incidents?
separate though,
Those are separate.
complaints and then actual problem areas.
Could we look at our safety map again next month, our most recent,
Look at what?
safety map?
The heat map
Of our,
showing where we have most of casualties and
of
crashes
both
and
the auto and auto
bike,
trainer bike,
vulnerable
yeah,
road
both of
users.
those.
I'm just wondering if that's gonna match up with the complaint. I'm kind of wondering where that'll match up or where that.
I think complaints tend to be, no one's died here yet, but we're worried about it.
We get common themes for complaints, but the locations are just everywhere.
Okay.
There's no like.
And I'm not gonna ask you to go through and like tally your complaints verbatim.
Even Tempview and Slate Canyon, I get a couple here and there, but they're other roads I get more complaints on.
That's what I'm wondering.
So-
Let me ask TMAC or our city employees also, so what are our, when we think about, oh, we definitely need some traffic calming on this road, what are the roads that come to mind? We've got Timpey Drive, Slate Canyon, 2230 North, 1450 East. What are the other primary ones?
Canyon Road.
Canyon Road?
Canyon Road,
1450 East where?
Canyon Road is an arterial, not a residential collector, so I would pull Canyon off.
All the way,
Okay.
is that all the way arterial?
All the way.
Oh, the arterial,
Yeah.
okay.
So if you're talking residential collectors,
Yeah.
there's 1460 North in Grandview, and then
That's the one that goes past Grandview and West
Westridge.
it's 600 South by Sunset. And this is called it was recently changed from a collector in 2020 to a minor arterial. I'm gonna throw 500 West on there, south of 300 South, okay?
Okay.
Because it goes all the way
Yeah.
to Lake Shore now. Or the Parkway.
That's correct. And we do have a couple of your speed signs on 500 West, but what allowed that connection, when we rebuilt I-15, that's where we put that connection underneath there for Fifth West. And then on top of that, we connected it to Lake Shore Drive.
There's a
Lakeview.
rumor that.
Lakeview Parkway, sorry.
I know, I
Lake
said
Shore
it wrong.
Drive.
It's really tricky because Lake Shore is over in the.
On 500 West southbound from 300 South,
Yeah.
people drag race all day long right there. Because 2 blocks down, it turns into 1 lane. And so the people in the right lane, I see cars go, it's almost impressive.
Right in front of your shop there, just
Yeah, right.
beyond.
Front of your south.
The
Okay.
south.
Elementary school too.
Yeah, right where kids are crossing the street on 6th South. They should be using the crosswalk on 5th, but that crossing guard crosses one kid on 3rd South, and then on 4th South, the kids cross.
So you're exactly right. And school zones is a big thing. So safe routes to school, I'd love to involve the TMAC a little bit more on that. You're exactly right. So I got a complaint, I went out and looked at it, and I thought I lost a 12-year-old girl. A UTA bus came within a yard from hitting this girl. And she did not go down to 3rd, where the safe routes to school says you're supposed to cross. She crossed at 4th and almost got hit. And there's no crosswalk at 4th. They're supposed to go up to 3rd. So we need to get these council the councils, neighborhood councils at the schools. They're supposed to hold a school assembly.
Community council.
Community
To
council.
do the safe routes to school.
There's too many.
They're supposed to hold at the beginning of the school year where the kids are supposed to walk and access.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's being done, but that's one thing that we're a little concerned about.
I would be happy to go personally to every school community council meeting and say, this is your responsibility. It's in your bylaws that you are responsible for having a safe route to school and that you are supposed to submit it online and this is how you access it. And if you can't get on, then have your principal do it for you. So that, because when we would do those safe routes to school, I was on the community council for 3 different schools, and it was tricky to do because the parents are the ones that are doing the legwork, the council members, but it's the, principal, the administrator who has access to the website. So the trust lands, only the principal can do it. So you're asking the principal who's already got his hand in a million things or her hand in a million things to do the work when you're the one who figured out where, it's like if you could give access to the parents. So you just need to get them to push and get it done.
And
you almost need a police officer or an engineer at some of those meetings to say, actually, you can't choose that safe route to
Right.
school.
So
that's what we try to do.
You go to those, Kehan?
Yeah, so I am in charge of the Safe Routes to School from the Provo side. So what needs to happen is by the end of November, every year, all the parents, the school, police, they're supposed to submit any concern related to their safe route to school for that specific elementary school. We, with the school board, we review that. So we have a representative from the school board.
There's a system for that.
There's a system, we review that, and then, so sometime by the end of July, we get back to the school. We give them all our feedback after reviewing all those complaints and concerns. They looked at it, and then they basically finalize their safe routes to school plan. Then they're supposed to submit that back to the state as well as to the city. Then everything that's on that plan, if it's not being implemented physically, actually, as part of that safe routes to school, we look at it, we find out where are the discrepancies, and we fix those basically. There's a system there.
What's the timeline for responding from July when it's final and you give it to them,
End of
when
March.
you have to have it?
So by the end of, when they submit to us, by the end of July to the state and city, we'll review it, and it's our job to get back to them by the end of the March, April, with a report card in our hand saying that, okay, we looked at all the complaints and concerns that you submitted. We looked at your safe routes to school plan that you submitted. Here are the things that we see that we need to fix from the city side, and here are the things that we believe you need to do from your side. So we do that by the end of March, April is our deadline to get back to them.
So you say you give it to them in July, and then it's the March, April the following year?
No, we get it in July. We get it July 1st. They have to submit it by July 1st. And then we have it for the upcoming school year.
So they're always a year behind then?
Yeah.
In a
So
way,
basically,
exactly.
they're responsible to educate the people in their school area, the previous year's
Right.
decisions.
Right.
So they're constantly working on what they're gonna recommend next, but implementing what they've already recommended that's been approved.
Exactly.
And that's a tricky thing because you've got the rotating commissioners who may or may not have been in part of it when it was made, but they're enacting something else, but then working for what they want to see next year.
And in most cases, there's not a whole lot of changes that's supposed to happen.
Right.
Once you have your map, your area, your safe routes to school map submitted, as long as that's active and it's being followed, you're good.
Mm-hmm.
Hardly will see crossing patterns change. So we need to move a crosswalk from third south to fourth south kind of a situation. That hardly happens.
Mm-hmm.
Once it's up to date, you're pretty good on that.
But see, what I see as an implementation here or a tool here is that because this dialogue is supposed to be taking place, then parents on the school community councils can say, we've got kids that are in danger because they're crossing up Fourth South. So now we're going to partner with the PTA or whatever, and we're going to educate people so they don't cross at Fourth South. We're not going to go lobby for a crosswalk at Fourth South. I would dare say that's why there's not one painted, because they don't want to encourage people to
And
cross
it would
there.
not warrant one because they cannot be within 2 blocks of each other. So,
Okay.
if parents had their way, they'd have a crossing guard at every street,
I
right?
know.
And we can't do that.
And you can't,
So-
you can paint it even if it doesn't have a crossing guard, right? But
I
only if
can
it
paint
warrants it.
Yeah.
But only if it warrants it. And so 4 South would not warrant a crosswalk because we have a signal at 3rd South
And a crossing guard.
and a crossing guard, yeah.
So we are out of time for today. I will email TMAC members independently, ask about, December plans. Our meeting date for that is the 21st of December, which may not work for many people, so or do you want to?
Was that December 21st, you said?
Yeah.
I would propose, Joy, that you recommend canceling that meeting in December.
Because the city staff has that day off.
Great, so
Should we do an action item, or would you like to take care of it?
I don't know that do we need to vote to cancel a meeting?
As long as we publicize it far enough ahead, I think we can cancel any meeting. Isn't that right for public noticing?
Anyone not want to cancel our December meeting?
Oh, please, I'll miss you.
Very efficient early. Great. All right, thank you, Vern. Okay, let's adjourn for today. Thank you.